Drivin Ivan here, and behind me, the BMW 320i. BMW had a tough task. They had to replace the 2002, which was quite popular, but federal restrictions were coming in, making it tougher to produce cars because they needed to be safer and more fuel efficient. So, what do I think of this BMW 320i, and why does it have such a cult following even to these days? Let's find out. While it's probably not as attractive as earlier BMWs like the 2002 and certainly the 3.0 CS, the 320i did retain some of the styling factors that made those cars and these early BMWs quite famous, like the shark nose. The 320i was a larger car than the 2002 it replaced. The wheelbase was actually 2.5 inches longer, but the car's length only grew by 1.5 inches total. Thankfully, the great Hofmeister kink remains. That's this great styling cue on the C-pillar where it bends forward here. It's a trademark on early BMWs, and I think it looks great. The rear three-quarter view is certainly pleasing, and I think it's aged well. I think it looks pretty cool even today. It's unmistakably a BMW, and it just has the shape of a very cool sports sedan. Certainly classic, but I think timeless too. When the 320i was released, the interior was quite advanced. The ventilation controls tilted towards the driver, and that was pretty cool and revolutionary back then. Serious sporting gauges, a big tachometer and speedometer, and of course other crucial gauges too, like fuel and warning lights and temperature too. This is an aftermarket steering wheel, certainly smaller than the original. I actually do still have the original. And a lot of these, of course, were automatic, but this one has the 5-speed shift, and that makes it quite collectible in today's market. This one has these sheepskins, which are quite dated. They were popular back in the 70s and the 80s, but actually underneath the seats don't look too bad. There is a small rip in this one, but looks pretty good overall, as does this passenger seat here. Really kind of a short seat by today's standards, but big bolsters and very, very padded and comfortable, almost springy, and that's pretty cool. You see that in Mercedes of this time period as well. Check out my review of the SL Mercedes, but very similar seating and very comfortable too, even for those stuck in the back. Any points were actually eliminated for safety reasons, and it's really kind of a smooth and I think quite nice looking dash. Of course, you get a rear parking brake and also the ability to move this seat should you need to. The original vintage radio looks really cool, and of course you get an ashtray and sort of antiquated looking by today's standards ventilation controls, but they do actually work, which is a good thing. You even get fog lights and a rear window defogger too. You get storage compartments on both sides, but you do have to roll up and down the window yourself. It's even stylish the way you go ahead and open it and close the door too. Nice. Closes with a big, strong BMW thud. So there you have it. The 320i interior is quite advanced for its day, and still I think has sort of a vintage, classic chic factor going for it. Now this one was rebuilt, from what I was told, about 90,000 miles ago and sort of hot rodded. You can see the fuel injection is gone. That's the I part of the 320i. I still have the fuel injection. You'll see it in the trunk in a bit. But this one has dual Weber carburetors, and it's a 2-liter that makes 110 horsepower when it was stock, and that's at 5,700 RPMs, and 112 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPMs. Of course, this one being modified will certainly do better. 0 to 60 takes about 9.5 seconds, and fuel economy is 18 miles per gallon in the city and 26 on the highway, and you can expect about 21 miles per gallon overall. Being a BMW sedan, of course, it's quite practical too. Open up the trunk, and for 1978, man, it was huge. Look at it. Whew. But lots of spare parts that came with the car, including the fuel injection and even part of the exhaust too. And like all BMWs, it even has a toolkit too. Some of the tools are actually up front for it in the glove box. So I'm always looking at classifieds to see what cars are available, and I've really wanted to get an older BMW lately. I have a 740i, which is sort of an M7. It's a Denon modified car, and it's really kind of special looking, I think. So I have that later sort of luxury BMW, but the ones that you shift yourself, the manual transmission, classic sort of sport sedan, sport coupe Mercedes that really started things off here in America in the 70s. They're the ones that are really gaining interest from collectors these days, and cars like the BMW 320 CS and even the 2002s are quite pricey. So here is the E21, the 320i. It was available from 1975 to 1983, and there were a lot of them built, almost 1.4 million worldwide. So you've got a lot of cars out there, you've got a lot of parts, but certainly probably not a lot of the 5-speed shifting cars. And this one with dual Webers really caught my eye. I like the smaller steering wheel. I just like the look of it. Not a concourse car, but a great driver, and it was hot rodded from what I understand about 90,000 miles ago. So to me, it was very appealing. The power steering, of course, there is none. So it's really a driver's car. You can feel the road, you know what the front tires are doing, you know when they lose grip, you know when the back tires lose grip, and it certainly is a car that has fun rear-wheel drive sports car handling. Front engine, rear-wheel drive, and you can certainly get the back end to come out, and you can certainly have a bit of fun with it too. It's certainly becoming a more and more rare experience to shift a car yourself. And back in the day, well, it was definitely what you wanted to get that sporting nature in a car. These days, automatics are quicker than manuals, but back in the day, manuals were quicker and they were more efficient as well. So enthusiasts and just people who wanted to save a little bit of money bought manual cars. But this one, the 320i, has a raspy engine sound, and it's really fun to drive. Steering's very responsive. The handling could be a bit quirky. You could get snap oversteer with these because of the way the suspension was laid out, but it is, certainly for its day, very good handling sports sedan, and one that other cars were measured by. You've got to remember that the 70s were when we had a huge oil crisis, and it certainly affected manufacturers. At the same time, safety regulations were getting more and more strict, so it was hard to build fun cars, so to speak. And I think BMW succeeded, plus they had all that pressure of replacing the 2002, which was very popular and certainly an icon. It's certainly an easy formula. Build a sedan that has seating for up to 5 and make it fun to drive. The fact that cars were so much smaller back then, I mean, if you look at a 3 Series today, they're huge, or the 4 Series since they've been introduced. But basically you have to go down to the 1 or 2 Series BMWs to really see a small sports sedan. And if you compare it to this 320i, even the 1, well, you'll see cars are huge these days. It's actually quite interesting. I just bought a Porsche 996 as a daily driver. Check out my review of that one elsewhere on YouTube. But I have a 1982 911 SC, and even comparing those two cars, well, the early 80s one is so much smaller. So it's one of the great things about buying a vintage classic car is that you can really toss it around. It's just a much smaller, sporty drive. And again, car's not driving you, you are driving it, especially with the 5-speed manual transmission. There's no electronic aids. There's no stability control. Nope, it's just you and the road and the car and the way it handles and the feedback it gives you to let you know what it's doing. And that is what makes a great sports sedan, and this BMW 320i certainly is that. It is a great sports sedan. In the late 70s and certainly through the 80s, BMWs were a sign of success, and they were very popular with young and up-and-coming professionals. That's right, the yuppies. And you can often see them in movies being driven by people from the right side of town. Image is everything, and the BMW 320i definitely conveyed success back in the day. If you were driving a BMW while your friends were driving a Volkswagen, well, they were most likely quite envious. Now, in terms of an owner's experience with the car, I haven't had this one for too long, but I do have a friend who saw a picture of this one and said, wow, it's just like his first one, and he owned this car for 13 years, one extremely similar to this one, and it was also 5-speed shifter, and he did lots of modifications, but he said that you had to drive it with extremely high revs because the torque and of course the max horsepower are way up there in the power band, and he said he did go through several engines because of that. So you definitely want to drive a car of this age and make sure that everything works. You want to check for rust, which is always a problem on these. This one of course has some rust, but nothing major and structural. But depending on what you want to do with your E21 BMW, well, there's certainly a wide price range of cars available. You can get a parts car for just maybe a couple $1,000s or even less these days, but to get a really nice one that's in Concours condition, well, you can be up in the $15,000 to $20,000 range for a really nice low mileage car. This one, I'd call it a great driver, and I love the modifications that have been done to it. It's a hot rodded version, and I love that. Of course, you definitely want to know the history of your car, and this car did come with a lot of receipts. Plus, I actually have something really cool. I have the original bill of sale for the car, and it was almost a $12,000 car when it was bought originally, $11,770. So it's very important to have receipts and a history on an older car, especially if you want to resell it, and you want to resell it for good money too. So to me, this is the ultimate BMW 320. I love the Weber carbs, I love the rawness, I love the sounds it produces, I love the way it handles. It's just a really sporty, classic BMW, and though it may not have the great looks of the 2002, or certainly not the 3.0 CS, which is definitely my favorite BMW, it still reeks of vintage BMW. It is a shark nose, and it's just got all the right ingredients that make it a great classic sport coupe sports sedan. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget to check out all of my other videos, and of course subscribe to me on YouTube. I'm Drivin Ivan.